And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off.
Go ahead and say it, Ed. Go Tigers!
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
You like that? You like that?
F it. Jamar's down there somewhere.
The New Orleans Saints select Marcus Davenport.
No!
Splash Brothers. Yeah.
It's playoff. Keep going, Brace.
The playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
And also, I want to pray for Jonesboro and the two kids that were shot and killed in Jonesboro this past weekend, and then also for Israel as they're going through what they're going through over there in their state of war right now. So we're going to go ahead and jump right onto that. Lord, just thank you for blessing us each and every day with everything you continue to bless us with, Lord. And as we enjoy and fellowship in this game that you bless us with, Lord, we all know that there's much bigger and more important things out there. And we work toward those every day, but we try to escape just a little bit in this sport and in this hobby, Lord, as we call fantasy football, and enjoying this game. But Lord, we know there's bigger things and more important things. And if you could just lay your hand on these people, Lord, as they're hurting or in pain, as this little girl's going through starting treatment, and just kind of give the doctors knowledge and give her courage and strength and understanding, and her family the same, Lord, as they're going through this process, and the doctors knowledge they need to treat her, Lord. And just please be with the people that are grieving as their losses in Jonesboro, Lord, after that horrific just incident, Lord, that was just something that, we know that you have a plan for it all, and hopefully that they can see, whatever that plan was for it to happen. Lord, please be with those families and of the young men that lost their lives, Lord. Just hopefully they're with you, Lord, up there and looking down and celebrating with you, Lord, as you called them home. And just please be with them in that town and everyone involved in that, Lord. And then also just be with Israel, Lord, as they're under war, and there's some heinous things that we've read about and heard about going on over there. And just please be with the people of Israel, your country, Lord, as you state in the good book. And just please be with those people and put a hedge of protection over them and help this end swiftly, Lord, and protect those people and everyone over there, Lord. And just help us understand why this is going on, but let there be a purpose for it, in your name, Lord, and help people learn and educate on this, Lord. Just please protect those people over there and everyone fighting for Israel in your name. And just thank you for the continued blessings that we have here, safe and healthy, Lord, as that just don't let us take it for granted every day, Lord. And just please continue to shine a light for you and speak your name, Lord. In your name we pray. Amen. All right, guys. So jumping right on in, like I said, Josh will be joining us here in just a little bit. But I apologize for my absence earlier this week. Had a family surgery that I had to be a part of, and just was not able to get my pod out like I normally do. And then Clay kind of stepped in, and I think he got a pod out there and got a graphic up for y'all on our waiver wire picks, and hopefully you got who you needed, Lord. I mean, you got who y'all needed, guys. Sorry. And if we're going to talk about some of those guys here in just a little bit that we had on that waiver pod. But anyway, jumping right on in, this is our start sit sleeper for this week for Josh, Clay, and myself. And as I said, it'll be me and Josh on this pod. Clay's sitting it out as he's sweating it to death watching this Philadelphia-Atlanta closeout game where Philadelphia wins. They're up 3-1 right now in the bottom of the sixth. And if Philadelphia wins, they're going to put his precious Braves out of the playoffs, which is pretty crazy because to me, they're by far the best team in the league if their pitching was healthy. But right now, Philadelphia is looking pretty good to close out this series and play Arizona next week or this weekend coming up. But Clay's sitting on pins and needles watching this game. And but he did send in his start sit sleeper picks, so we're going to talk about those as well as mine and Josh's. And for the last time, this will be the last time that we go over our parameters for our start sit sleeper pod. But this episode, we're going to talk about our start sit sleeper picks at each position. We're going to pick players outside the top 5 at QB, top 10 at running back, top 10 at wide receiver, and top 5 at tight end. Everyone that's in those top spots are pretty much, stud players that are matchup proof, or you're going to start them no matter what. And so that's why we don't even talk about those guys normally on this pod. And then also we want to thank our sponsors, Big Reed BBQ, Automotive Detailing Solutions, This Little Piggy Barbecue Food Truck, Mimi's Children's Boutique, and Doug Demona Farm and Feed. They're our new sponsor. And then also want to go ahead and get started and talk about our title sponsor, Big Reed BBQ. It started as a family recipe in 1986. Our mild flavor is right on time, and our spicy is just enough heat. Owner Ken Reed and Director of Marketing Andre Leonard say you can get our sauce at Doug Demona Farm and Feed, Time to Shine Detail, The Salty Brahma, and the Equipment Store, and on Amazon. That's correct. You can get it on Amazon sent straight to your house. So please go out, support our sponsors. We appreciate it. And thank you for everything that y'all do to support us and stepping up. And if you're listening to this, please just step up and support our sponsors. Also, we're going to go ahead and jump right on into our news, or mainly injury news, which there's a lot to cover. Injury news and updates, which is pretty much just injuries. Devontae Adams out of practice on Wednesday with a shoulder injury that he was playing through on Monday night. And then he was limited at practice on Thursday, so you like to hear him back from that injury from last week. He should be good to go as long as he didn't have a setback or anything like that. But that's Devontae Adams. Big one right here. And unless you live under a rock, there's no way you haven't heard about it. But Justin Jefferson placed on IR with a hamstring injury. It's going to miss at least the next 4 games. And unfortunately, but he will miss the next 4 games, and some are saying that it could be more than 4 games. We're just going to have to see. But being on IR will at least the next 4. Next is going to be Austin Eckler. Good news for Austin Eckler owners. As we suspected, they had a bye last week, and that gave him just enough rest. He practiced in full on Thursday and stated is 99.9% sure he will play in week 1. And I like those odds for sure. And moving on, next will be Saquon Barkley. And as we talked about last week, they came out and said he has a high ankle sprain. After they kept saying it was an ankle sprain, then we finally found out before last week's game it was a high ankle sprain. And anyway, so this last week he practiced limited a couple times, and then he ended up getting ruled out, which is crazy. But that's what happened. Well, this week, practice limited Wednesday, practice limited on Thursday. I'm thinking we need to see a full practice before he comes back out of him, but I really don't know. Honestly, if you got him, you're just watching to see if he's active or not. If he gets a full practice in, I think he comes back. If he doesn't, I'm not so sure they roll the dice on him, especially with as poorly as they've been playing. Next going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown. Good news for Amon-Ra St. Brown owners with that abdomen injury. Practice limited yesterday. Dan Campbell came out and said he felt really optimistic that he was going to be able to come back this week. He said a lot more optimistic than he was last week, so not complete confidence in it. But, excuse me, guys, sorry. Amon-Ra did come back and practiced in full today on Thursday, so that's really good news. And Amon-Ra come out and said that he feels ready to come back. So that's good enough for me. So I'd like to hear that. DK Metcalf with that rib injury did not practice Wednesday and did not practice on Thursday, which is kind of strange. Seeing him coming off a bye week, thinking that he got plenty of rest over those two, that whole week. And then he comes off the bye week, didn't practice Wednesday, didn't practice Thursday. He kind of did the same thing before the bye. So maybe this is kind of the regimen they have him on. And he didn't practice. He didn't have a great game, the one right before the bye, but the one before that, playing through this injury, he did have a good game. So we know he can play through this injury. So and he did say it's been extremely tough playing through it. So as long as he doesn't have any regression or a setback with this rib injury, then he should be okay. But I definitely watch his schedule and practice and make sure he at least gets a limited, if not a full practice in tomorrow on Friday. And if he does, then I would expect him back this weekend. Next will be Aaron Jones. Ended up getting ruled out on Monday night with that hamstring injury. I looked right before we started this pod. There's still no update on his hamstring injury, which is kind of strange considering that I think they do play on Sunday. But no new update yet. So I just keep a lookout for that. I know he was practicing on a limited basis last week, so I feel like he's got to be getting kind of close to coming back. Next is going to be T. Higgins with his rib injury, which is actually a rib fracture, but he was limited at practice on Wednesday and Thursday. And then T. Higgins also stated that it's looking promising for him to come back this week. I think he's going to need a full practice in tomorrow to do that. But I mean, if he said he's looking promising, that's good news. And I'll be honest, with the way Joe Burrow's been looking, I would be looking to trade for T. Higgins, because I would think their owners are probably a little sketch about the injury. He hadn't gotten off to the best start this season, and you might could get him for pretty cheap out there. Maybe some player that's come out kind of hot that wasn't expected to, and trade him for T. Higgins, because I think with Joe Burrow getting back healthy, that offense looking better, I think T. Higgins is going to look really nice this weekend if he gets to go. Next, going to be Mike Evans with a hamstring injury. I haven't heard that before. Just kidding. He's had multiple hamstring injuries over his career. I mean, I'd bet money every time I hear, if you'd ask me, what kind of my injury Mike Evans had, I'd have said hamstring in a heartbeat. And anyway, he was dealing with it right at the end, right before his bye week. Heard it right at the end of their game before their bye week last week. Came out of their bye week and did not practice on Wednesday, which was a little alarming, especially coming off that bye. But he got in a limited practice today. So maybe they were just still conserving his reps just a little bit, kind of trying to keep him healthy. Given his history, I would definitely be watching his practice schedule for tomorrow to see how he reacted to practice today. But given that he got a limited practice in, I would think he'd be trending to playing, but he might not be 100%. So we'll just have to see on that. Next will be Jahmyr Gibbs, who actually had a hamstring injury that happened on Friday during practice last week. Ended up getting ruled out last week on Saturday. Well, this week, did not practice on Wednesday, did not practice today on Thursday. And honestly, that doesn't sound good at all. And I would be shocked if Jahmyr Gibbs plays on Sunday. That's just me personally. So, man, look for David Montgomery to get a big workload again. Next, a couple more big ones that have a huge effect on their offense as far as players. Devin Achane got put on the IR for a knee injury and will miss at least the next 4 weeks, if not more. And James Conner also for Arizona put on IR with a knee injury and will miss at least 4 weeks. So if they're missing 4 weeks, guys, I'm not going to talk about them each week, but the week before they're eligible to come back, I will go for an update just to kind of let y'all know where we stand on them. So you won't hear about Achane or Connor or Jefferson for at least the next 3 weeks. And then the week before they can come back, I'll update y'all on their situation. Next will be Miles Sanders, with a shoulder injury. Honestly, he's got to be running out of body parts to get injured. I mean, he's had multiple different types of injuries already this year, which is kind of crazy and a little disappointing and alarming. But he did not practice on Wednesday, did not practice today on Thursday. Last couple weeks, it was a groin injury. Now it's a shoulder injury. And honestly, they have a bye week coming up next week. So it would, with him not practicing for 2 days in a row, would not shock me if they held him out this weekend. Then they had a bye week and try to get him fresh and have him come back after their bye. And that's Miles Sanders. This one just popped up today. Actually, wasn't even on this injury report until just a little bit ago. I was going through refreshing over some of my injuries right before the pod. Sam Laporta sat out of practice, did not practice today. He practiced full yesterday, did not practice today due to a calf injury. Okay. Sam Laporta did not practice due to a calf injury today. Honestly, sounds like he either injured it at the end of practice yesterday or training or beginning of practice today. I don't know. But the fact that he showed up on a Thursday with a new injury in the middle of the week does not bode well for his chance, especially if he does not practice on Friday. I would not expect to have Sam Laporta out there if that's the case. But keep an eye on his practice regimen and see if he practices tomorrow on Friday. Another one, Anthony Richardson with a shoulder injury, placed on IR with a grade 3 AC joint sprain, which is a pretty nasty sprain. They're saying anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks minimum for Anthony Richardson to miss, which is a very wide range. But being placed on IR, it's going to be at least 4 weeks. So look for Gardner Minshew in there. And honestly, I think those wide receivers get a little bit of a boost. Next, going to be Khalil Herbert with a high ankle sprain on Thursday Night Football last week. Did not practice Wednesday or Thursday. As we know with high ankle sprains, it's normally at least a 2 to 3 week absence. He stated that he would be fine after the game and at beginning of the week of practice, but he hadn't practiced this week yet. So I don't think he's going to be fine. I think he's going to miss a couple weeks. And if Roschon Johnson comes back, I like him a lot. If not, it's going to be the Dante Foreman show. And then last but certainly not least, we got Deshaun Watson with a shoulder injury, and it says a bruised shoulder. I don't know what that means, but he didn't play last week, sat out of practice so far this week, and then they just announced a little bit ago that they completely expect Deshaun Watson to sit for this week and just let him rest and heal up. So that's pretty much going to wrap up our injury segment there, and we're about to get started on our start sit sleepers. All right, look who's joining us. Josh Williams, the original Dirty Boot Boy, getting in right on time for our start sit sleepers part. We've already covered our injuries, Josh, and we're going to go ahead and start off with our starts at quarterback. So who do you got starting at quarterback this week for us, Josh?
I got old Matthew Stafford starting.
Oh, how did I not see that coming?
He of course everybody knows he got Cooper Kupp back.
Oh,
and
yes, he did.
He'll make any quarterback better.
Yep.
And now he has two really good wide receivers in Kupp and Nakua.
Yep.
And then third option with Atwell, he's still a pretty good third option. He's coming off his first multi-touchdown game of the year.
Yep.
He has a great matchup against the Cardinals. Arizona. Yeah, Arizona.
Yep.
They who have allowed the fourth most passing yards and the sixth most touchdowns in the NFL.
Yep.
They've had a difficult schedule so far, but they're finally getting some teams with good matchups. I expect Stafford to have possibly his best week of the year so far this week. I like him a lot, and he's still out there.
Yep, I know.
And
I know
on waivers in a lot of leagues.
Agree. And I'll be honest, he was my sleeper this week, Josh. And I'll tell you, he was ranked pretty high, and I was really shocked he was ranked as high as he was, because typically when they rank, they haven't been ranking him, or really some of the guys that aren't as owned as much as he is. as high as he is ranked this week. So that goes to tell you right now they think a lot of him this week. But so that's why I put him as my sleeper, because I think he's only owned in let me double check this, but I want to say it's like 40% of leagues or something like that. Let me just double check.
That's
Here we are, 49%.
especially with buys. With buys
49,
started,
yep.
how does he not?
49% of leagues right now. And a little bit of information I had on him as my sleeper, and then I won't talk about it in my sleeper part. But for exactly like I said, he got Cooper Kupp back. For the last 2 weeks, he's had at least 20 points in the last 2 weeks. This week he gets Arizona, 27th against quarterback in Arizona. And they've given up an average of 26.2 points a game to quarterbacks. Last week, they gave up 37 points to Joe Burrow. And you could almost argue that as bad as Burrow's been playing, and Stafford's been playing a little bit better here lately, but he's got a pretty solid wide receiver core like Joe Burrow has, a decent running game with Kyron Williams. I like Matthew Stafford a lot against Arizona this week. I really think this could be a shootout game with Arizona. Arizona's been able to put up some points. The Rams defense has been not that great. So, but yeah, I like Stafford a lot as your start there, Josh. And then going on over to Clay's start, because I got Clay's picks here. Clay is starting Geno Smith. And I can tell you, I've got Geno as a sit this week. So I'm gonna look up some stuff and see if I can find some reasoning on this for Clay here. I get Geno's coming off a bye, which is good, typically, but he's going up against Cincinnati defense has been pretty stingy against quarterbacks for the most part. The last 3 weeks, Cincinnati has not allowed 15 points or more. Like, they've held quarterbacks to 14.7 points or less the last 3 weeks. And those quarterbacks were Stafford, Tannehill, and Dobbs. So not world beaters at quarterback by any means. Definitely probably not Geno Smith caliber. But they're still being pretty stingy with quarterbacks the last 3 weeks. And honestly, it seems like the way to beat Cincinnati is on the ground. So I feel like this is going to be more of a Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet game, which is why I have Geno Smith as a sit. But I guess Clay's thinking that Geno's going to come off his bye strong. He's been a little lackluster so far this year, to say the least. But it's also at Cincinnati, which is another reason I didn't really like it too much. But that's who Clay's got as his start this week. I'll go ahead and talk about him as why I have him as my sit, and then we'll skip him when we get to that point. But he was banged up going into his bye with a knee injury. We seen Drew Lock come in for a little bit in that last game. He was a full go at practice, so it seems like that he's pretty much over that knee injury. But to me, it seems like even with that thought there, what if he gets banged up a little bit? I don't know. Well, I'd like to see him play first before I know if he's fully over that knee injury. But also, he has only scored more than 17 points once this year out of 4 weeks. And Cincinnati's defense is 13th against the quarterback. And they haven't allowed, like I said, more than 14 points the last 3 weeks. So anyway, I'm not a fan of Geno. Clay likes him. We'll see what happens this week, honestly.
I'm not real big on him this week either. I would have definitely not had him as a start. The only thing I can see is maybe he's thinking it's going to be a shootout.
Yeah,
because I feel like
Cincinnati's
the Bengals
playing well. Yep.
Yeah, they're getting back to the Bengals we thought they were going to be.
Right. Yep.
And Burrow's getting healthy.
That's right.
So I mean, they're going to probably have to throw to keep up.
Yep.
And his weapons are healthy now. So.
But they've been running the ball really well with Kenneth Walker, and I think they can be successful at that.
I think it's going to be a Kenneth Walker game myself.
I think it's going to be him and Charbonnet. I think both of them. I think you can play Charbonnet to flex this week, no problem.
Well, I think too you got to try to slow down the Bengals, and I think you have to do it by running the ball.
I agree. I put a little caveat here. I didn't list this guy And I did get word, and I talked about my injuries, but I had Deshaun Watson. I was going to put him as a sit because of his injury and the matchup and everything. But then we got word right before the pod that he will not play this week. So
I was wondering why that line for the 49ers
Yeah.
changed so much, because it was like
yeah.
200, like minus 200, which I thought was kind of crazy playing the 49ers. And then it jumped to minus 400. I'm like, something changed.
Deshaun Watson was ruled out. So, but anyway, so, that's Clay's start and my sit. And then we're going to go ahead and jump on into my start, which is the opposite quarterback in that Seattle-Cincinnati game, Joe Burrow. I think he's back. I mean, last week he said he was the healthiest he's felt, no setback.
And
he found Jamar Chase again because he's always open, and he literally was. I think I heard a stat. It was just crazy to me. So Jamar Chase had 15 catches. On those 15 catches, he was supposedly they have degrees of openness for when you catch the ball, and you have covered, like partially open or something like that. Then you have open, you have wide open, right? On 15 catches, all 15 were either open or wide open. And nobody was within, I think it has to do with defensive players within a certain range. And I think open is defensive players within 5 yards. So nobody was within 5 yards of Chase for all 15 catches.
That's crazy.
It was something like that. They were talking about that stat.
The best wide receiver on the field, and nobody's guarding him.
Yeah, well, like he said, he's always open. But I don't think that changes any because Seattle's the 23rd ranked defense against the quarterback this year. They've allowed at least an average of 22.9 fantasy points each game, and they've allowed 30 points in two of their 4 games this year. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility, and honestly, I think it's a better chance than not that Joe Burrow puts up 30 again. So I like Joe Burrow a lot as a start this week. So
I like him a lot too. I was actually going to put him down, but I said I know Derek's going to put him, so I left it alone.
Yeah, man, it's kind of crazy. We've been doing this for a year, and I can almost pick, I just kind of see it coming with one of us. There's just certain people that just stick out when you're looking at numbers and opponents and everything. And that's how I go through and I pick my guys. But then I see some of the more obvious and I'm just like, yeah, I bet one of the guys picks those too. So, and very rarely is there somebody that I think that and I don't pick them and then we don't talk about them. Out of us, when there's 3 of us doing it, I really am trying to think of people that I don't pick because I think somebody else will, and then we don't talk about them. I don't think that happens hardly at all.
Burrow done this same thing last year. Started out slow the first couple of games, and then from about midpoint on, he was lights out the rest of the year. And I feel like the same thing's going to happen.
And I'll be honest, if there's somebody in your league that, maybe they think that this is the best he's going to be, like after last week, try to see if you can trade for him. I actually had a trade for him in a dynasty league, but it was too much. I'll go ahead and say it was. They were offering me Joe Burrow and who was the wide receiver? Chris Godwin and Evan Ingram. It was Joe Burrow, Chris Godwin, and Evan Ingram for Justin Fields and A.J. Brown. And this is a dynasty league, not a keeper. This is where you keep the whole team for as long as forever. And I was like, I can't give up the youth of Justin Fields and A.J. Brown. I mean, I love Joe Burrow. I do. But, man, I just couldn't give up that youth because Chris Godwin's 27 and Evan Ingram's 28. And I was like, I couldn't do it. So I had to pass on it. But if that guy's
A.J. Brown has been killing it this year too.
Well, that's true too. And I was hesitant with that a little bit because he had his mixed games last year, but he has really stepped it up. His chemistry with Jalen Hurts has really shown through this year.
Well, it's the second year, with him too.
Yeah,
makes a big difference.
But anyway, so I like Joe Burrow. Who do you got at a sit? Since I already talked about my sit, and we'll get
Okay,
to
I got
his in a minute.
This may not be popular around here. Got Derek Carr as a sit.
I can see it.
First of all, he's not really had very good numbers this year. And even after this week having his first multi-touchdown game, he only had 183 yards, so he still didn't even have a great numbers. He's going up against the Texas defense that has been stingy against quarterbacks so far, only allowing 238 passing yards per game and only 3 passing touchdowns in 5 games this year. Plus, he's not – we all know he's still not 100% healthy. He's still dealing with that shoulder.
That's right.
I think this is going to be a defensive battle. I like Kamara in this game.
Could be a field goal game, really.
I feel like
Houston.
I feel like they go – yeah, you're right. I feel like they're going to go Kamara a lot in this game. So
I like it. I mean,
I want them to win, but I don't like him going.
And that's what you can say. He might not be the best fantasy quarterback, but you know what? When he plays, the Saints win for the most part.
And he don't make mistakes, a whole lot of mistakes.
He really don't, man. I mean, he's got 2 interceptions on the year so far, 1 fumble, so 3 turnovers total. You know, and as much as he's been getting hit, that's a miracle. You know, honestly, it's a miracle that he's only got 3 turnovers all year. And, I mean, if he's winning, his pass percentage, he's only got below 62 completion percentage once, and that was the Carolina game. But he normally stays anywhere from 62 to 70% completion percentage, which is what you want. And it's not elite, but it's still good. I mean, honestly, I don't care if he's a good fantasy quarterback or not, as long as we win with him.
Yeah, he's a game manager. I mean, we can say it.
I do think he gets better, though. The more comfortable he gets in the offense, the better the offensive line gets. I think he gets better.
Well, then that shoulder gets healthy. He gets healthy too. That's going to help.
So, but I completely agree with that sit. And then, like we talked about, mine was Geno Smith, and then Clay has old Brock Purdy. This is bold because I looked at Brock Purdy.
Well, that's my sleeper.
He does not have a good matchup, but you know, I heard somebody say a stat the other day that Brock Purdy's averaging like 2 points less a game than CMC. Okay. And it's like, do you sit CMC? No, cuz. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, the dude's only got less than 20 something points once this year, and that was against the Rams. He had 14. But other than that, the last 3 weeks, he's averaging it's like 26 points a game. And that was against Dallas and the Giants and Arizona, which Arizona's been okay. Dude, check out this completion percentage against Arizona, right? 20 for 21.
21, yep.
283 and a touchdown. And 2 carries and 1 for rushing and he's getting some rushing touchdowns. So I'm sorry, Clay. I'm not trying to bash your sit by any means because they are playing against Cleveland at Cleveland. So you're not going to get the best weather this time of the year in Cleveland now. And Cleveland's only allowing 14.6 points a game to quarterbacks. But last week they gave up 32 points to Lamar Jackson, who's a rushing quarterback. But they let Lamar complete 15 of 19 for 186 and 2 touchdowns. So gotta think that I feel like the 49ers offense is better than Baltimore's, and I feel like Brock Purdy's probably a better passer than Lamar Jackson. I hate to tell Clay that, but now a better complete quarterback, I don't know because he doesn't run the ball that much, but he's definitely to me a better passer. And he's the number 9 quarterback on the year so far, and he's got weapons out the wazoo. But it's at Cleveland, number 6 team. Outside, not probably going to be great weather, so I see what you're doing there, Clay. But I don't know. I'd have to go more on the sleeper side with Josh. So, Josh, you want to talk about him since he's your sleeper? You want to go and talk about him?
I do. And it's hard to call this guy a sleeper now, but you know, people still don't seem to believe in him.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Oh,
like you said, he's a top 10 guy right now. according to people still not buying into it, but I mean his finishes in fantasy every week are up there, top 10, top 15 every week. He's playing last week when he played against the Cowboys defense, he threw for 4 touchdowns. Now everybody thought last week, Cowboys, he won't do nothing. Look what he does, 4 touchdowns. He's excelling in this 49ers offense. And it seems like, it's just the Shanahan system is just perfect for him. Cleveland is a tough matchup, but I believe in Purdy and the 49ers and all the weapons he has. I almost think he's matchup proof at this point.
I gotta agree with you. I don't think with his weapons and Kyle Shanahan calling those plays, I don't think you sit Brock Purdy unless he has a string of bad games. Like even if he has one bad game, I don't think you sit him. I really don't. But that's just me. Clay's calling it. Hey, you know what? Maybe Clay's got a crystal ball we don't know about. He's reading the tea leaves. But he's your sleeper and he's Clay's sit. Man, a lot of controversy on start sit sleepers. I wish Clay was on here. But I know he's sweating bullets right now.
I think, in maybe 2 or 3 years, we're talking about him as maybe a top 5.
Somebody made the comparison, which he doesn't throw as much, but it is it's eerily scary how similar his emergence and the whole everything it is the same as him and Tom Brady.
And the GOAT, yep.
Somebody else said that on a show, and I said, you know what? That's pretty crazy. Because he
got
in there.
Thought about that myself,
as an injury replacement, and just kind of took the reins and ran with it. Made a playoff run. The defense has been the strength of the team, kinda, but he's got the weapons like Brady did. The coach like Brady did, kind of to an extent, with Parcells when he was there. I don't.
Well, shoot. I can say that Mr. Irrelevant is far from irrelevant.
No doubt. So, but so I get that. And then who'd you have for a sit there? Did we talk about? We didn't talk about.
Yeah, we talked about mine. Derek Carr was my sit.
Oh yeah, okay. I was about to say, man, see, we got so many crossover. Well, Geno Smith was mine, so
okay.
That's why I was like, we got so many crossovers.
So,
that's why I was
so
like,
what's Clay's sleeper?
Clay's sleeper is Bryce Young. Yep. So Clay's sleeper is Bryce Young, and I can see it. He kind of came on last week. Looked a lot better, had the best week, I believe. Yeah, had the best week of the year so far last week. 25 for 41 against a pretty tough Detroit defense at Detroit. 247, 3 touchdowns. Now, he had 2 picks, so he needs to clean that up a little bit. But you give him those 4 points back, we're looking at 28 points last week against a top 10 defense in Detroit. And who was it? And Bryce Young called him elite before he played that game, giving him mad respect, Now he gets a Miami defense that's middle of the pack defense, honestly, this year. But a good chance that they're going to be trailing in this game. Miami's 24th against the quarterback so far, allowing 24 points on average to quarterbacks this year so far. Last week they held, Daniel Jones to 12 points last week, but honestly, the way Daniel Jones has been playing this year, I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. But Denver, they gave up 18 to Russell Wilson. I'll be honest, I feel like that's kind of what we're probably expecting, 18 to 20 from Bryce Young. But with quarterbacks being on bye, a couple tough matchups this week. If you're in a bind, I think you could do worse than picking up Bryce Young and start him. And I'll be honest, he's got more weapons at wide receiver than people realize.
A little foreshadowing. My start might depend on how Bryce Young plays.
Yeah,
for my wide receiver start.
And then you probably have the same guy that I do.
Yeah, well, we have to.
Yeah.
Then.
But, you got Thielen, you got Chark, you got Mingo, you got Terrence Marshall. Those 4 guys right there are all playmakers. So, I could get down with your sleeper there, Clay.
Well, I
sure.
just feel like they're probably, if Miami does what they've been doing,
That's right.
they're going to jump out to about a 2-touchdown lead, and they're going to throw
Yep.
the ball the rest of the game.
That's right. So, and then you had Brock Purdy as your sleeper. And then
Yep.
I had Matthew Stafford as my sleeper, who we've already talked about. So those are some guys that we like a lot at sleepers. And then that pretty much wraps up our quarterback segment on start sit sleepers, which is kind of crazy because we're jumping all over the place. But we're going to go and roll on into our running backs. So who do you got starting at running back this week there, Josh?
I have Raheem Mostert.
Yeah.
He's back.
Do.
He's back to the Dolphins number one with A-Chain on IR.
Yep.
We all know what he can do when he gets the chance. He has a 5.38 yard per carry for his career.
Yep.
Which is the fourth most in an NFL history among running backs with 300 plus carries. I thought that was crazy.
Yep.
Fourth most in the history. And the Panthers defense ranks 26th against the run. So he's getting a pretty good matchup. But the Dolphins have been able to run the ball on everybody this year, no matter what the defense is. They're allowing 4.9 yards per carry. If they're allowing 4.9 yards per carry and he averages 4.38, I'm expecting some big runs from him this week.
And I'll be honest, Josh. I'm trying to figure out how in the world he's ranked 10th.
I know.
I mean, you got him ranked behind Josh Jacobs. I know Josh Jacobs going against New England, but New England's at least the 22nd ranked run defense, and Josh Jacobs has been terrible. Mostert's got a 50-point game, for Pete's sake, and you got him listed after Jacobs, and Mostert's about to take over the backfield again. I mean, he's
Mostert might have another 50-point game this week, to be
honest. And then you got him listed behind ETN, who's coming off a good game, and he's been very good. But, I mean, other than his 38-point game last week, the dude had 10, 17, and 6 the 3 games before, and he's going up against the Indianapolis defense that's 20th ranked, but they've been better than people realize at the run, except for the last 2 weeks.
Well, even with A-Chain in there, I mean, he was still a starting running back, a 1 or a 2 running back. I mean, he's had touchdowns in 4 of the last 5 games. And there was another thing I seen. A-Chain ran like a 4.2. I mean, we all know he's fast.
Yeah.
But Mostert's right behind him with the 4.3.
Yep.
So,
that's right.
I mean, he's one of the fastest behind, his teammate running backs in the league.
And
I don't know if they're factoring in the chance of Jeff Wilson possibly coming in and taking some carries, but he's not going to take any more carries than A-Chain. And I don't think he's taking that many if he even plays.
I will be honest, I don't think Jeff Wilson plays. You know
I don't
why?
think he plays this week. No.
Because he's practicing, but they have not activated him off the IR. And I think if they felt confident he was going to play, unless they're trying to play some kind of magic smoke show, I think they would have already activated him off the IR. And I really feel like it's going to be Mostert, and then it's going to be some kind of combination of Savon Ahmed and Chris Brooks behind him. And it's going to be mainly Mostert. And I think this is a huge game. And man, I've already traded Mostert in the league. I had him. But if he goes off and you can trade Mostert for somebody that's doing really well right now, I trade him. Just say somebody like Kamara comes out, has a bad game, and somebody will trade you Kamara for him, do it. Don't even think twice. Because I just feel like it's just a matter of time till he goes down. But he's going to be money till he goes down. But when he goes down, and when Jeff Wilson comes back, it's going to be more of a timeshare than it was. It's still going to be the Mostert show, but I think it's going to be a 50-50 show, And Mostert can produce, but he's still got to be healthy,
He's producing with A-Chain.
Yeah, so... But yeah, no, I like that pick a lot for sure. And then Clay has as his start at running back, the same guy that I have starting at running back is old Joe Mixon. So, Clay, I like that pick a lot. And as y'all can tell, I'm high on Cincinnati against Seattle this week because I really feel like Cincinnati's, I don't know, they just figured it out last week. And I mean, I guess the old adage goes, they go as their quarterback goes, and Joe Burrow figured it out. And next thing you know, they look like they're ready to light the world on fire. So, but honestly, and like I just said, this pick has a lot more to do with Joe Burrow coming back and looking good than it does really with the matchup or Joe Mixon. Because when Joe Burrow it looks good like he does right now, that box is not going to be stacked against Joe Mixon. Not like it has been. And Seattle is the 19th ranked defense against the running back. They're giving up an average of 22 points a game to running backs so far. And we all know there ain't no other running backs really getting carries at all on this team. So it's going to be Joe Mixon, running the show for them. And not only that, but Mixon only has one touchdown so far this year, all year, one touchdown. You cannot tell me there's not positive regression coming for Joe Mixon. Not to mention that Joe Burrow ain't probably looking at that stat like, we got to get my boy Joe a touchdown. So I like Joe Mixon a lot this week at home, and they're at home. So if it's kind of cool, if the weather's changing there in Seattle, if it's kind of nasty, they're going to run the ball. And I think Cincinnati in general has a good game. I'm not saying they're not going to pass it either. I think Cincinnati in general has a good game, and like we talked earlier, I think there's a good chance it's going to be a shootout. So, yeah, I like Joe Mixon and Joe Burrow. The Joes, start the Joes. Yeah. So, yep, Clay and I both with Joe Mixon as starts, and we'll go ahead and roll right on in our sits at running back. Who you sitting at running back there, Josh?
I'm sitting Rashad White.
Yeah.
Other than week 2 against the Bears, White hasn't done much in fantasy this year. And he's going up against the Lions defense that has allowed only 248 yards total and through 5 games, which equals 49.6 yards per game and only 2 touchdowns on the year. So it's not a good matchup. He's not been running the ball well. Well, I mean, I say that he's getting.
I was about to say,
think about it, he's getting the volume.
Okay.
He's getting the volume though to be able to be. I mean, there's some games where he didn't even break 50, and he's touched the ball 15 to 17 times.
He's had some tough matchups, Josh. If you go and look at his matchups,
well, this one's a tough one too.
I know, and that's what I'm saying. He's had some tough matchups, and there was some analysts talking that you should be trying to trade for Rashad White because it's going to open up for him towards the second half of the season, and there's a lot of people that are going to be kind of down on him. But his usage is through the roof, and they're winning games. They're moving the ball, so he's going to keep having opportunity. They're hanging onto the ball. Their defense is better than people thought, so they're getting more possessions. But I do agree with you. Another really tough matchup. I looked at him real hard. It hurts me because I've got him. I mean, he's my RB2 in the league, and I'm going to start him because my other option is Dameon Pierce. And I feel like he's probably got a better chance to catch some balls and have a productive day than Dameon Pierce does. But I completely get it. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I have him in a league, and I've sit him for the last several weeks. He's probably my 5th best running back on that team.
Yeah. I went wide receiver heavy in that draft. I've got Keenan Allen, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Garrett Wilson. And obviously Garrett Wilson didn't really pan out. And then after that, I drafted Justin Herbert. And so, yeah, I didn't go running back till 5th, 6th, 7th round. And I got him in one of those. And then my other running back in that one's David Montgomery. So he's obviously my one. He worked out, but Rashad White, I got Rashad White, Dameon Pierce, and Cam Akers. And it's like, roll the dice. I've been starting Dameon Pierce, but man, New Orleans defense looked good last week, and I can't start a running back against them after what they did to Ramondre Stevenson last week and Ezekiel Elliott. So I'm gonna sit Dameon Pierce this week. I might regret it if he falls in the end zone, but I think Rachaad White at least gets some passing volume. And I feel like even if he doesn't, if he goes 15 for 50, maybe if he catches 4 or 5 passes and gets me 10 points, I'll be happy with that,
Well, have the Saints give up a touchdown to a running back? I don't think they have.
Hang on, and I'll tell you, probably not, because I
So the
almost
odds that have him falling in the end zone is probably unlikely.
No, they have not.
I didn't think so.
Yeah, they only gave up 45 yards last week to New England combined.
Yeah.
For all of them. They haven't given up 100 yards on the ground yet. They gave up 90 to Tennessee, and that was the most. So, yeah, they're not
Derrick
somebody.
Henry.
Yeah, they're not somebody you want to start against. At least the Lions have given up 2 touchdowns to Seattle on the ground, but that was the only game they gave up a touchdown to a running back. So they haven't given up one in the last three games. So, and they've given up less than 6 points the last 2 weeks, and that was Green Bay and Carolina. Now, Carolina, I understand, which Green Bay didn't have Aaron Jones, so that skewed a little bit, but still, that Lions defense is good, and I'm glad to see it, man. I'm pulling for the Lions. I'm a New Orleans fan, but
the
man,
Lions too.
I can't help but root for a franchise that's pretty much been pretty poor their whole entirety of existence, and man, I'm pulling for them big time. So, as long as they don't play the Saints in the playoffs or the Super Bowl, then yeah, I'm good. So anyway, but yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Rachaad White, it hurts, but I'm gonna start him. But I do completely agree with that sit. And then Clay has Jerome Ford as a sit. Man, it's so funny. We were just talking about sits and people I looked at, and I looked at Rachaad White, and I looked at Dameon Pierce too, which I already threw him in there, but I also looked at Jerome Ford, and look at us talking about these cats. And honestly, Jerome Ford's a little banged up right now. And he practiced in full today, but he sat earlier with a knee injury, and they've been managing this knee injury. But honestly, he's going up against San Fran, which, he's coming off a bye, but he's going up against San Fran, and we all know what they can do. But even before San Fran, like, he averaged 2.9 yards a carry against Baltimore, 1.8 yards a carry against Tennessee. And he's been getting some catches, but that's about the only thing he's been getting. And he got saved by a couple touchdowns against Tennessee. Otherwise, it wouldn't even been close. And
could this turn into more of a Kareem Hunt game, maybe?
Man,
him being banged up, they get behind,
him.
They need to throw the ball, they put him out there to make some plays in the.
I dropped him over the bye because I needed some spots to fill in for some injuries, and I'm thinking about trying to find room for him on my bench just in case he starts to take over here. But, looking at the 49ers have not allowed 60 yards to a running back yet. 60 yards, Josh. They've only allowed 2 touchdowns, and they've went up against the Rams, the Giants. Now, the Giants didn't have Barkley, I don't think. That might have been the game he got hurt. James Conner and Arizona, Tony Pollard and Dallas. All right. And have not allowed 60 yards to a running back yet. So,
well, I think part of that too, though, is, man, they've been up so big in these games. Everybody's had to go away from the run.
Yep. And honestly, I could see that happening again against Cleveland. So,
especially with their quarterback out.
Yep. So I like that sit a lot. And then my sit at running back is another one that I was contemplating with, but that's Brian Robinson Jr., who really hasn't been doing as much the last couple weeks as he
slowed down a lot.
Yeah. And honestly, he was ranked a little bit higher. I mean, he's ranked right behind Jonathan Taylor this week, and I'm not saying I expect Jonathan Taylor to do a lot, but man, all right. So Brian Robinson's the 15th ranked running back in fantasy so far this year. But honestly, that all came over the first 2 weeks. And then ever since after the first 2 weeks, he has not eclipsed 13 points. And 2 of those weeks, he didn't even eclipse 9 points. But the last 3 weeks, and also the last 3 weeks, he's only averaging like 12 carries a game. He had 6 carries last week against Chicago when he should have been running the ball all over the place. Now they were playing from behind.
They got down big early though, and I think that's what's happened. They played really well the first couple of games, and they could run the ball because they were up in those games. Now the last few games, their offense hasn't played that great, or I guess their defense actually.
Well,
because they're giving up a lot of points.
He averaged 1.7 yards a carry last week against Chicago, which was skewed because he didn't run the ball a lot. But he only 6 for 10. But then at Philadelphia, who is supposed to be able – actually, it's a pretty tough run defense. I lied. You're supposed to be able to pass against them. Sorry. But he averaged 3.2 against them, but he fell in the end zone for a touchdown, which kind of saved his day. But this week, he gets the number 1 run defense in fantasy, Josh, in Atlanta. And a lot of people don't realize how good they have been against the run.
Oh, yeah, they're good.
They've only given up an average of 12 points a game to the running backs. And we all know that Brian Robinson splits time with Antonio Gibson to the tune of about a 60-40, maybe a 55-45 split. And if they're only giving up a total of 12 points a game on average, I don't like the odds of him putting up 10 or better.
Well, another thing about Atlanta, too, they're going to run the ball, and they're going to slow you down when they have the ball on offense. So you're not going to get near as many touches because they're not going to have the ball near as much.
Yep. So, anyway, yeah, I don't like Brian Robinson at all this week. And, man, I just feel like there's better running backs out there that have a better chance to get you 10 or more points. And I feel like and I kind of feel like 10 points is like his ceiling this week against Atlanta at best. And I don't know if he gets to that. So, but that's my sit. And let's go ahead and get on into our sleepers at running back. Who do you got sleeping at running back there, Josh?
So, actually, there was 2 guys I've been tossing around. One of them was Rashad Johnson, but I don't know that he's going to play because of the concussion. I liked him because he's sit behind Bijan Robinson at Texas. Mm-hmm. Then he's come into the NFL. He's sit behind Khalil Herbert. He finally gets his chance, and I just feel like he's going to have a pretty good game. But I didn't pick him because I wasn't sure if he's going to play.
I'm right there. I had him. I looked at him. I almost picked him, but I think he's going to be in concussion protocol, and I don't think he's going to make it out because he didn't practice.
He didn't practice today? If he don't practice tomorrow, he's probably not playing.
He didn't practice yesterday or today at all, non-participant. So
the only thing is he had a Thursday night game last week, so he's had more days. So he actually could come back where, most of them, they don't want him to come back with the next game, but being he had a couple extra days. Yeah.
But normally those guys are already practicing.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
The fact that he's not, I don't now. Do I think he's got a chance to possibly take over when he does come back? I absolutely do, because Khalil Herbert's got a high ankle sprain. So he said he felt good, but then he ain't practiced at all this week. And we all know high ankle sprains are like 2 to 3 weeks minimum. So if you give Rashawn Johnson, say, 2 weeks of that whole backfield, I don't know if he gives it back to Khalil Herbert. I mean, if at least more of a timeshare, but so I like that pick a lot. I'm honestly disappointed that he doesn't get to take advantage of this week with Herbert out, but I think it's coming, and I think he's going to take over eventually.
Yeah.
So who was your real sleeper? Yeah, sorry.
So I went with with Amari DeMercado.
Yep.
I think that's how you say his name.
Yep.
He's the rookie out of TCU playing for Arizona. He played 100% of the snaps after Connor went down.
Yep.
I know Keontae Ingram could take some snaps away if he's cleared to play, but I don't know that he's going to play this week. Plus, he had a neck injury.
Yep.
Neck injuries and running backs.
Not good.
They're not just going to throw him. Even if he plays, I just don't think he's going to do a whole lot to take too much away with that neck injury. And he's one hit away from being right back on the sideline if he does play.
That's right.
You know, if nothing more than just a volume play with this guy, because he's going to get the touches. I think it's a great streamer option for.
He also catches the ball well out of the backfield. And if that's one thing we do know about Arizona, they will throw the ball to their running back. And
they will.
I like that pick a lot. I honestly thought about he was one that I was looking at as well. And they're going up against the Rams, who's kind of a tough run defense. But what do you do to combat a tough run defense? Screen plays, check downs to your running back, throw the ball to him in space. And I feel like he's got a good chance to do that. Also, man, I watched Keontae Ingram play last year. I had James Conner on several teams. I was talking to a buddy about this earlier today. I had him on several teams last year, and I picked up Keontae Ingram to start whenever Ingram went down a couple times last year. And he did okay because he scored some touchdowns. But he was crazy inefficient. He looked slow and just not that explosive or athletic. I'll be honest. He looked like a fullback kind of. I'll be honest. And I really feel like that. Wow. Sorry. Just to put a pause right here just on that. So the Phillies just won on a check swing called by the first baseman for the third out.
Yeah.
All right. So the Phillies just eliminated the Braves. I'm sorry, Clay and Chance.
Okay, so there's some dirty boot boys crying right now.
On a checks, but all right. So don't get me wrong. I'm all about the check swing. The guy called it down there. But, man, on the final out of an elimination game, and it wasn't that obvious. It was not that obvious. I think you gotta let that go, Josh. I think you gotta let that go because it was not that obvious of a check swing. Like, I seen him do it, and I was not 100% convinced. Like, most of the time you can tell when that bat breaks a plane.
I'm letting that go because but did you the umpire actually kind of got into it? He
he rung it up.
He kicked his leg up
he rung it up. I mean, he did it convincingly. But I don't know. I wish they'd go back and show it, but they probably won't because everybody's celebrating. But I think you got to let that go in an elimination game in the playoffs on a check swing for the final out of the game. But that's just me. But anyway, I hate it for Clay and Chance, but I think the better playing team right now won this.
I'll say the hotter team.
Yeah, the better playing team right now is what I mean by the hotter team.
Yeah.
But anyway, all right. So back to it. So anyway,
I wouldn't. I was a few things I was going to say about this guy.
Yeah, go ahead.
Last week when he did come in, 45 yards on 10 carries and a touchdown. Hey, that's pretty dang good from where I'm sitting. And one catch for 12. But something that I read today, so he grew up down the street from SoFi Stadium. So this is kind of a homecoming game of sorts for him.
He's going to be fired up.
He gets his first NFL start they said, he could walk, right down the corner and that's exactly where the stadium is. So, he's going to have family there. He's going to be pumped up. I just think there's a chance this guy has a really good game.
Yep.
So I just wanted to throw that in because I thought that was interesting. You get your first start in a stadium that you grew up right down the road from.
Yep. And not only that, Josh, Connor's on IR. So if he does well, we're looking at minimum 4 games for DeMercado to be relevant. So
I think a little crazy thing in one of my leagues, I was able to pick up Roschon Johnson and DeMercado in the same league.
Yeah, dude, there's a couple leagues. Roschon Johnson's still available, and I don't have anybody to drop to pick him up because I'd have to drop DeMercado or somebody like that. And the only reason I don't is because DeMercado's healthy right now and Roschon's not. And at least DeMercado, Connor's on IR. And, Khalil Herbert will come back. Otherwise he would be put on IR. But
I don't even have room to play him. But,
they could be.
But I'm keeping other people from getting them.
That's right.
Too.
That's right. Yeah. So, but I like those sleepers a lot. And but I like Clay's sleeper here a little bit because all right, I like his sleeper, but I just don't know about him this week, and that's Jeff Wilson Jr. I know what Clay's thinking here of the opportunity, but I'm not convinced that he comes back this week, just for the fact that they still haven't elevated him. He was limited yesterday and limited today. To me, if they're gonna activate somebody off IR, they got to be practicing in full by now. Like even
and he hadn't played since last year. I mean, so he didn't get any run in the preseason. I mean, he's
and he not only that, he's listed with ribs and finger injuries. So not just one injury he's listed with, but two. So yeah, I mean, so let's see. I'm gonna read about him right now. So they're saying that if he practices fully on Friday, that they could activate him ahead. But the offensive coordinator, Frank Smith, said Thursday the running back looks ready to play this weekend. Looks ready to play. But it says if cleared to make his season debut. So he hasn't really been cleared yet.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
I feel like if he plays, though, they're not just going to let him
but
go.
I will say
it'll be a snap count.
I will say I do like him going forward. I think he's got it with the way the running backs for Miami score. I like him going forward because I think it's a good opportunity for him and Mostert to get touchdowns each week. But this week, and it's a good matchup this week. I mean, 31st run defense for Carolina, but I just don't think he plays this week.
I feel like with the three running backs that Miami have, they're all good. Yep. There's no way all three of them are healthy at the same time.
No. And that maybe they knew that.
Yeah.
So
they're all good and they all could be starters, but there's no way that all three of them are. Yep. So, if you got one of them, there's a good chance they'll be starting some point of the year.
So, but anyway, I like that pick for future purposes, but this week, I don't know about it there, Clay. But that's Jeff Wilson Jr. And then my sleeper at the running back is a guy that really wasn't hard to pick as a sleeper, but he's losing his job, quote unquote, is Zach Moss. Ranked pretty low in the standings this week, but I don't think he's done yet. And after his 41-point performance last week, Zach Moss said he will not go quietly.
I had him on my bench in 2 leagues last week.
I had him on mine too in a league, and I lost by 20. And he would
have won,
and I would have won.
Yeah.
It hurt pretty bad because I just knew that Taylor was going to come in and at least take 50-50 workload, but he didn't even do that. And I think this week is more of a 50-50 workload. But the way Zach Moss is performing,
he's not going away.
That 50% could be 15 points. And honestly, man, with Gardner Minshew under center, I mean, I think that opens up for the running game a little bit better because he's a better passer. And
he's not going to run.
Yeah. Well, and it's not the best matchup this week for him against Jacksonville, who's got a pretty tough run defense, but Zach Moss catches the ball well out of the backfield, and he actually has put up some really good yards per catch numbers so far this year, catching the ball out of the backfield. So, I think there's a good chance Zach Moss puts up at least 12 to 15 points in a part-time role for Indianapolis. So I like him a lot this week as a sleeper because I know a lot of people are like you and I last week that are probably thinking, man, I should probably sit this guy. And yeah, I was one of those guys and I'm regretting it. And I'm not going to do it this week. I got him in a league. He's been my RB2 the last couple of weeks. And then I sat him last week and he was on my bench and I should start him. And I'm going to start him this week at my RB2 for one more week. I picked up Emby DeMercado in that league, but I'm going to start Zach Moss over him this week and hope that DeMercado kind of shows out and takes over that role in Arizona, and then I'm going to swap him out next week because I do think Jonathan Taylor does take over eventually. I just don't think it's going to be yet. So, but, yep, that's my sleeper at running back. And that should wrap up our running backs. And we can go ahead and jump right on into wide receivers. And Josh, I think you and I have the same guy. So go ahead and break it open and tell them who our start is at wide receiver.
We kind of alluded to this earlier, but Adam Thielen.
Oh, yeah.
In a game where they'll probably throw to keep up with Miami offense, I'll go with the guy who is number 8 in targets at 46 on the year. He's got a 25% target share. Bryce Young seems to trust him, and let's see, he's got 4 straight games with 7 or more receptions. Miami gives up the second most receptions to the slot, which is where 71% of his catches come from.
Yep.
Thielen is a top 10 wide receiver in PPR leagues and should be started.
Yep.
The old guy still got a little bit left, I think.
Yep. Number 9, inside the top 10, number 9 last week, 13 targets, 11 for 107 and a TD. And he's averaging 20 games a year so far this year. And honestly, I mean, it's been I knew that some people said he could be sleeping coming out of camp because people were forgetting about him, but I did not expect a top 10 fantasy so far from him. But going up against Miami, they're going to have to throw the ball, and Bryce Young likes to lock in on some Adam Thielen. So I don't see any reason why he's not outside. He's not at least a top 10 wide receiver again this week. So, I love that pick, and that's mine as well. So we're going to roll right on into Clay's start, and that's Chris Godwin, which I completely agree with as well. Chris Godwin's going up against a defense that's, they're kind of lower end in Detroit as far as secondary. They got a really good run defense and a pass rush, but last week they allowed 55 points to Carolina wide receivers, and who we just talked about, Adam Thielen, for 197 yards and 2 touchdowns. And honestly, Baker Mayfield's right now a lot better quarterback than Bryce Young, and arguably with Tampa Bay's wide receivers, Chris Godwin's probably a better wide receiver than anybody on Carolina's team. So there's a good chance that we get a good production out of Chris Godwin. And I'm probably thinking that Chris is thinking that there's a chance that Mike Evans ends up sitting out this game because of his hamstring injury. Mike Evans did not practice practice on Wednesday coming out of their bye, but he did practice on a limited basis today, which kind of makes me think maybe they were just doing a maintenance day for him. Not real sure, but anyway, he practiced limited day. I would keep an eye on that, because if there is no Mike Evans, I would bet money that Chris Godwin has a big week. But even with Mike Evans going up against this Detroit team, I think there's a chance that this could end up being a shootout with Detroit and Tampa Bay. And I think that's what Clay's probably thinking, and it's a good chance that Mike Evans and Chris Godwin have big days. So I like that start a lot at wide receiver there. And like I said, both Josh and I both had Adam Thielen, so we're gonna go ahead and go right on into our sits at wide receiver. Who are you sitting at wide receiver, Josh?
I'm sitting Terry McLaurin. Allows the 5th fewest fantasy point game to wide receiver. He's got less than 55 yards in 4 of 5 games this year. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Last week, season low, 4 targets in the game. And he really hasn't done a whole lot all year.
Not for what you would think would be a wide receiver too.
He will
been more of a flex play.
Yeah, he'll likely have AJ Terrell shadowing him, who is turned into a really good cornerback.
Yep.
He's ranked 40th so far this year, and because over, but he's even worse, which is a surprise. He's at 68.
Yep.
So, I'm sitting both of them.
Yep, I completely agree. That's it's tough, but Yeah, man. I don't think you can play either one of them this week. And honestly, I think that's going to be another field goal game right there. I guess a lot of people are saying Atlanta's defense is the defense to stream. I find it really hard because their defense does not put up very many points against other opposing teams. So I have a hard time streaming them. But I mean, their run defense is ranked first. Their pass defense is ranked fifth in fantasy. So, but the thing is, they're like ranked 22nd in points. So they don't allow a lot of points, and they don't allow a lot of yards or touchdowns, but they also don't score a lot of points as a defense, which is crazy. But unfortunately, that's the case. But they're a big streamer for a lot of people. I'm not streaming them just because they don't score points. And to me, like, if you're streaming a defense, you're looking to score some points. Even if they hold the team to very little yards and points, but say they don't have any sacks, but they don't give up any points or yards, they're still only going to have, like, at the end of the game, they'll probably, have 6 or 7 points on the game, but that's probably it. And if you get another team, they might give up 30 points, but if they score a touchdown and have 7 or 8 sacks, they're still having a better game, So anyway, but yeah, I like that pick a lot. For McLaurin. And then Clay has Brandon Ayuk as a sit at wide receiver. So this one, I see why, because Cleveland is the number 1 ranked pass defense in the league. They're only allowing an average of 19 total points a game to wide receivers. And but to me, I feel like Debo would probably be more of a sit than Ayuk, just because he seems to garner a lot more attention.
That's kind of what I was thinking too. If I was going to sit one of them, that's who it'd be.
But maybe Clay's thinking, with as productive as Ayuk has been this year, maybe he's thinking more teams are going to pay more attention to Ayuk than they will Debo.
Well, and Debo's been banged up too.
But either way, Cleveland's the first ranked defense against wide receivers. And they've only given up more than 15 points once all year to wide receivers total. And believe it or not, that was to Pittsburgh, which almost seems like a fluke, but that was probably a big George Pickens game there. So I get it. I can see why he's leaning that way. But I also think that Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan seem to always find a way, to move the ball and be somewhat productive. But either way, I can get where he's coming at from that for his sit. And then my sit at wide receiver is Tyler Lockett. This one was honestly more of a gut feeling because I feel like Cincinnati's been very stingy against the pass, and they've allowed more against the run than they have the pass. But also, Tyler Lockett really, he's had one good game all year, and that was the game against Detroit. 10 targets, 8 for 59, and 2 touchdowns. Outside of that, he has not put up more than 9 points all year. 3 points in week 1, 8 points in week 3, and 9 points in week 4. And that was against the Rams, Carolina, and the Giants. Terrible pass defenses. So, because that was with Carolina, they had already lost J.C. Horn at that point. So he was probably seeing their third corner. And Cincinnati, being the ninth ranked pass defense against wide receivers so far this year, they've given up a touchdown in every game to a wide receiver so far. But I don't think that touchdown's going to Tyler Lockett. I think that's going to DK Metcalf or Jackson Smith and Jigba, because they're the 2 bigger bodies. And like we already talked about, we feel like this is going to be more of a running game for Seattle with Charbonnet and Walker. So yeah, I'm not liking Tyler Lockett at all. And not only that, he's only had more than 4 catches in one game. So I'm just not feeling it with Tyler Lockett, and which on buys you might not have any choice but to start him at the flex. But if you could help it, I feel like if you got a better if you got a better player out there that you could start over him, I wouldn't feel bad about sitting him this week. So, and then that's my sit, and then that's gonna roll us right on into sleepers at wide receiver. So, who you sleeping at wide receiver there, Josh?
Jordan Addison.
Yep.
With JJ on IR, someone's got to step up, and the wide receiver, he already had 3 touchdowns in his 5 games here. He should see an increased volume. They've allowed the 3rd most touchdowns to receivers this year and give up a lot of points on a weekly basis. With the Bears offense playing better, this could turn into a shootout. So they might throw it, and I expect he might catch a touchdown this week.
Yep. I like it. I like the target volume. Now, I do think KJ Osborne, I think it's going to be a pretty even split at first because KJ Osborne's been playing all wide receiver sets, and Addison's only coming in on 3 wide receiver sets, which Minnesota runs a ton of. So it's not like he doesn't get all, but he just hasn't had that experience at all the 2 wide receiver sets. So, but I think he's going to start getting into that. I think it's going to be eventually the Jordan Addison show. But I think I like that. I think you can really pick him or KJ Osborne this week for a sleeper. So, but yeah, I like that pick a lot. Clay's pick at wide receiver for a sleeper is one that I looked at and actually have as a sleeper as well, and that's Josh Downs. Honestly, Josh Downs, when Gardner Minshew is in, they have this chemistry, and I guess it's because maybe Josh Downs started out on the second team with Gardner Minshew throwing to him, so they've got this chemistry going, and then now Josh Downs has worked his way up pretty much to wide receiver 2 on the team behind Pittman. And Josh Downs, believe it or not, has a 25% target share on the team. And the only other person that has more of a target share is Michael Pittman at 30%. So between Pittman and Josh Downs, we're talking about 55% target share right there. But a 25% target share it's high for even wide receiver 1s on some teams. But anyway, so the last 2 games, Josh Downs has averaged at least 16 yards per catch. And then the last game, he had 6 targets, 6 catches for 97 yards against Tennessee. And then now he's going to get Jacksonville, who's the 21st ranked defense against wide receiver, who has given up at least 200 yards to wide receivers in 3 of the last 4 games. So if he's getting 25% of the targets, Pittman's getting 30% of the targets, and they're going up against a team that's given up at least 200 yards to wide receivers in 3 of the last 4 games, I think there's a good chance that Josh Downs has a decent day. And not only that, but they're giving up an average of 38.9 fantasy points per game to wide receivers with at least 1 touchdown to a wide receiver each week. So, yeah, good chance Josh Downs has a solid day. I've got him in a couple leagues. I'm going to fire him up at the flex in one of my leagues and see what happens. But, yeah, so I like Josh Downs a lot as well as a sleeper. And that's pretty much going to round out our wide receivers. And we're going to roll right on into our tight ends. So who you got starting at tight end there, Josh?
My start this week is Cole Kmet.
Mm-hmm.
He's had back-to-back good games. Yep. Last week he had 5 for 42 and a touchdown, and the week before he had 7 for 85 and 2 touchdowns, which has moved him up to number 4.
Yep.
The number 4 tight end.
Yep.
And he kind of goes as Justin Fields goes, and Fields and the Bears offense is rolling right now. He's number 2 in targets on the team, and he's a big red zone favorite for Fields. The Vikings allow a bunch of production through the air, and Fields is averaging 30 pass attempts a game now. So they're not just a run-first team anymore.
Not at all.
So I like Cole Kmet. Actually, if the Bears keep playing like this, he could, be good for the rest of the year. End up,
really
top
like
5, possibly at least top 10.
Yep, I agree completely. I mean, we just seen Kansas City, Travis Kelce banged up ankle, 12 for 88 and a touchdown. So, not saying that Cole Kmet is Travis Kelce, but he's extremely athletic and a great pass catcher like him. So, all Justin Fields has to do is get him the ball, and he's been doing that. So, I like that pick a lot. And then Clay at start at tight end has Jake Ferguson for the old Dallas Cowboys, thinking he's going to have a bounce back game going up against the Chargers. And I know what Clay's going with this. He's going for a shootout against the Chargers, what he's thinking, which it very well might be. Ferguson was on fire there for a while, averaging 7 targets a game almost. And then all of a sudden last week against San Fran, just 3 targets, going 3 for 28, which was a very lackluster game. But I think I'm kind of like Clay. I looked at him a little bit. Chargers, though, have been pretty decent against tight ends. Honestly, the only tight end been successful against the Chargers has been T.J. Hockenson in week 3, who went 10 for 82 and a touchdown. But other than that, no other tight end has had more than 7 points against them. But Jake Ferguson's pretty solid, and we've seen Dak Prescott go to Jake Ferguson a fair amount, especially in the red zone. So I like the call, Clay. I like Jake Ferguson. We'll see if he gets back on track with them this week against the Chargers in a possible shootout. So not bad there. And then my start this week is probably the only Washington player you want to think about starting this week, and that's going to be Logan Thomas. Honestly, going up against Atlanta's like we said, number 1 against the run and number 5 against the pass in defense. But you know what? They're number 31 against tight ends. So, because they're averaging giving up at least 18 points a week against tight ends, which last week they gave up 8 for 87 and a touchdown to Dalton Schultz. And then the week before, we've seen Logan Thomas kind of break out a little bit with 11 targets, 9 catches for 77 yards and a touchdown against Chicago while they were trailing. So I'm not expecting that production, obviously, out of him this week. But I do feel like if they need to get Logan Thomas the ball to win, to try to catch up like they might have to against Atlanta, I think that's a good chance. So I think they're going to have to pass more to Logan Thomas to move the ball, because they're not going to be able to move it on the ground or to the wide receivers. So I like Logan Thomas a lot this week.
Yeah, I like him too, because he was my sleeper.
Yeah, there you go. You want to add anything else? There you go.
Well, I think I read where he's the tight end 6 right now, maybe.
Yeah,
on the season.
Yeah, because he's had 2 really big games, and then he had that one where he got the concussion. And then he sat out one, and then he had one other one that was okay. But other than that, for the most part, he's been really productive. And he was productive in the past whenever way back to Alex Smith days, I believe he was there. And,
well, the talent's always been there. It's been health, has been a big issue with him.
Yep.
Every year you hear him talking, well, this is going to be the year, but so maybe this is going to be the year where he can stay healthy. And something I read made a lot of sense. Sam Howell is pretty much running for his life back there. Yep. And so he's trying to get rid of the ball quick over the middle to so he won't get sacked or whatever. And that's kind of where he's been playing. So
that's right.
He's kind of his first option a lot of times to look at.
Definitely.
And the Falcons, like you mentioned earlier, they're giving up the 2nd most fantasy points per game to tight ends. So like that. And like you said, that was your sleeper. So and then we already went over we went to my start. I didn't even get Clay's start. My bad. Well, so we'll go on to Clay's start. And we did. We got Jake Ferguson. Sorry. Yeah.
So now we got to go to your sit. Sorry, I lost track where I was there.
All right.
So who you sitting at tight end?
Dalton Schultz.
Yep.
He had a big game last week, but this week he's playing against our Saints, and who have allowed the fewest yards to tight ends this season. Less than 100 yards total in 5 games, which is kind of crazy.
Yep.
they were the toughest matchup for tight ends last year too.
Yep.
So I would avoid him if you can with the matchup that he's got.
Now, I do want to say that I like Schultz the rest of season. With the way Stroud has looked and with him finally getting in a rhythm with Schultz, man, I think Schultz could end up being a dark horse to be a top 10 tight end the rest of the season. But I completely agree with you this week against New Orleans. There's no way. Completely agree. I actually looked at him very hard for my sit, and I had a feeling I was like, I wonder if somebody else is going to throw him in there. And so I kind of passed on him. But, yeah, I completely agree there. And then also, I wasn't even paying attention to this, but Clay has Logan Thomas as a sit. So
What?
I'm trying to figure out what. Man, I feel like sometimes Clay sees these guys and he's like, I think they're going to talk about them. I'm going to go the opposite direction. And
or maybe he's thinking he had a good game last week. He can't have another one.
And he might be, but I'll be honest. If Logan Thomas is healthy, I like his chances. And I will say they're playing at Atlanta, and Atlanta's going to slow the game down. There's not going to be the volume. But like I said earlier, the only way anybody has been productive against Atlanta's defense has been throw into their tight end. And so I can't agree with that one there, Clay. But, maybe you're right. Maybe Washington comes in there, stinks it up, and goose eggs, and Logan Thomas doesn't do anything. Their whole offense doesn't do anything. And that's a very high possibility as well. But I think that they're going to get where they're going to realize that Logan Thomas is the only way they can move the ball. And I think he has a decent day. So, but yep. So Clay's sitting Logan Thomas, and then me, I'm sitting Tyler Higbee, which is not a real stretch here of late because he has not been that productive.
And Cooper Kupp back.
But with Cooper Kupp back, Puka Nacua stepping up, and Tutu Atwell being all three of them being better playmakers than Tyler Higbee, where is the incentive for him to get the ball to Higbee? I really don't see it. And last week against Philadelphia, 3 targets, 2 for 20. And I just feel like there's not enough to go around for all these playmakers. And I think Higbee might be the odd man out. And then if that was not enough, Arizona is the 4th-ranked defense against tight ends so far this year, only giving up 7.5 points a game to tight ends. And they've only given up a total of 1.9 points to tight ends the last 2 weeks. Okay. And that includes one of them against George Kittle. And that was who had the one catch for 9 yards. For 2 weeks, they've given up 1.9 points the last 2 weeks. That's it. So, yeah, I don't like Tyler Higbee's chances of being relevant this week against Arizona.
I'll tell you one thing I've seen about the Rams that I think is kind of crazy. But if you look at the ESPN rankings, they have 2 wide receivers in the top 8.
Yep.
Who would have ever thought coming into the year that the Rams would have 2 wide receivers in the top 8?
I mean, I would have put Cooper in there, Cooper Kupp.
Nakua is not going away. He's not going away. I'm telling you, he's too good of a player.
That's right.
He's a real deal. He's not no flash in the pan kind of guy. He's good.
I wonder if Cooper Kupp, I wonder if they went to him and like, hey, we want you to find a guy in the draft that
like you,
just like you. And he said, that guy right there. And they drafted him. I mean, that's what it seems like, honestly. But anyway, so yeah, I'm sitting Tyler Higbee, and that's going to round out the sits. So who are you sleeping at tight end? Because Clay and I have the same guy. So who are you sleeping at tight end there, Josh?
Logan Thomas.
There you go. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yep, that's right. So we've already talked about him.
Yep.
And y'all know we like him a lot. And then Clay and I have the same guy at tight end we're sleeping, and that is Cade Otton. All right. Now, this is not the first time Cade Otton's been on this pod. Clay has had him as a sleeper before, and he actually had a touchdown that game, and I think 3 catches for like 30 yards with a touchdown that game. And I remember when Clay called that, and I seen him score on that game, I was like, man, look at him go. And but this week, another week where Mike Evans is banged up, and I think that Cade Otton could be a beneficiary if he does not play. But even if he does play, Detroit is the 30th ranked defense against tight ends so far this year, averaging giving up 16.8 fantasy points a game to tight end. Last week, they gave up 5 for 50 and a touchdown to Carolina. I can't even tell you who Carolina's tight end is, and they gave up 5 for 50 and a touchdown. So I think that's a decent chance that K. Dotton has a probably an average week at worst.
Is it Hayden Hurst?
No, it is, but actually, I seen somebody picked up. He was not the one doing the damage. It was
their second tight end was the one that scored all the points.
Where's he at? Yeah, because Hayden Hurst had 3 for 21, but their other tight end was what's his name? I see somebody picked him up in a deeper league I'm in. Hang on, I'll tell you.
And played him? Wow.
Well, heck, no, it wasn't him either. Well, Tommy Tremble had the touchdown. Oh, so I guess it was never mind. He was the guy they picked up was the guy for Indianapolis Colts tight end. But yeah, so this was a cumulative effort for Carolina, as Hurst was 3 for 21, Ian Thomas was 1 for 28, and then Tommy Tremble was 1 for 1 with a touchdown. All together for 16.8 fantasy points for Carolina. So anyway, yeah, they gave up 5 for 50 and a touchdown to them cumulatively. Well, good thing for Tampa Bay is K. Dotton is the primary tight end and plays like 90% of the snaps at tight end. So I think he's got a chance to move the ball. Not to mention it's pretty tough for them to run the ball. We've already talked about that. And if they're going to be throwing the ball, we've seen Baker Mayfield throw it to K. Dotton, especially in the red zone. So I like his chances to sneak in there and get a touchdown here and there, especially if Mike Evans is out. I think he could have even a bigger day at tight end. So,
well, I see what Clay's doing. He's picking anybody that is his boy from Tampa Bay throwing it to.
And I'll be honest, I almost had Baker Mayfield as my sleeper. But Detroit has been pretty stingy for quarterbacks for the most part. They've been pretty decent against them. So I was like, I don't know, but I think K. Dotton has a decent chance. Same thing with Chris Godwin. But yeah, I feel like you're right. Clay's leaning towards some Tampa Bay Baker Mayfield magic this weekend. So, but that's going to round out our start sit sleepers. And just a couple streaming options of the defense here. Detroit at Tampa Bay. I like Detroit's defense to put some pressure on Baker for him to make some mistakes and also to get some sacks against them. And Jacksonville at home against Indianapolis. Believe it or not, a lot of people don't realize Jacksonville's defense has been pretty successful so far this year. And so far, they are the number 11 ranked defense in the NFL. And, last week they didn't have the best week against Buffalo, but they put up 4 points. But the week before they had Atlanta, and they put up 24 points against them. 9 points against Kansas City, 17 points against Indianapolis. So they're going up against Indianapolis again, and they just put up 17 points against them in week 1. So let's see if they can do it again this week. But yeah, so Detroit, Jacksonville, and then like I said earlier, a lot of people are picking Atlanta. I'm staying away from them, not saying that they can't be productive, but I just got a feeling that they might have a good defensive-wise game in real life, but fantasy-wise, I don't know if they're going to be extremely productive putting up points. But that's just my opinion. And then you didn't have any streaming.
No, I really didn't look.
Okay.
I mean,
that's
fine. I like the Saints honestly, this week after what they did last week.
Honestly, streaming wise, it's really rough. I've been trying to pick defenses too that aren't owned in a lot of leagues, but really there's not that many good options this week. Even these right here, I don't feel 100% confident in. A lot of the good options and good matchups are highly owned teams. But then also just a couple streaming kickers. I'm still throwing them out there because they've still been productive and they're still top 5 fantasy options at kicker. But that's Brandon Audrey going up against at San Fran. He's the number 5 kicker so far. I think Dallas moves the ball against San Francisco, but I don't think they score a lot of touchdowns. And I think that gives Audrey a fair amount of a chance to kick some field goals. And then Brett Maher for the Rams going up against Philadelphia at home. He's the number 3 kicker so far this year. And they're going to be in the Dome. They're going to be against Philadelphia, who is a stout run defense. So if they get down to the goal line and they're trying to run the ball and it's not happening, they end up having to kick some field goals. Brett Maher might have a solid day. And neither one of them are owned in more than 55% of leagues. So there you go. And they're both top 5 options so far this year all the way. So, but that's going to round out our start, sit, sleeper pods for week 6. We appreciate everybody listening. Good luck this week. Please like, subscribe, download, give us some feedback, give us some ratings on your application of choice. We appreciate everybody that's listening. We appreciate our sponsors. Please be with the people we're praying for, as we talked about earlier in the pod. And good luck this week. Keep chasing that trophy.